It was the most interesting time. Staying in a place where I don't understand the language.
Right.
I know one or two words, but cannot read the language. Mandarin is very hard to read.
Right.
But you can speak it easily than reading it. But it was a culture shock. But it just kind of made me realize that, life, as long as you got ability to do something, just continue pursuing your dreams.
What up, world? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Cosign Conversations Podcast. I am your host, KG. The Cosign Conversations Podcast, we interview entrepreneurs, executives, professionals, influencers, and creators that we co-sign and want to highlight in our community. So today I have a very special guest. I have a serial entrepreneur. I have an educator. I have somebody who's been in the industry for over 20 years and is here today to not only share his blueprint, but to share his game and not gatekeep. He wants to uplift our community. So without further ado, I want to present to you guys Will Aiyeojenku. How you doing today, my guy?
I'm doing great. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you tried. It's got a lot of vowels.
Okay.
Aiyeojenku.
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 You got it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Practice makes perfect.
Absolutely.
Practice makes perfect, man. Before we kind of get into what everybody knows you from in Dallas right now, Fusion Vibes, which you built a magnificent company.
Thank you.
I like to start with the backstory, right? Success doesn't happen overnight. They do say sometimes overnight success takes 10, 15, 20 years, right? So I want to start with your origin story. Who was Will before he was the serial entrepreneur Will?
All right. Thank you for having me. Grew up was born in Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay.
Raised up in London and New York. And, as a child of an immigrant, you see the hard work that your parents actually put in, and you hopefully want to do better, never want to be in the same situation they are. And so that's really what the basic, the ground, the foundation started from in terms of how to at least find ways to elevate yourself as you grow older. And then of course, you emulate people. You see how people are, doing great things, and you wish and hope that, one day your time will come.
Right.
But at the same time, when your time comes in, and what do you do with that? That's what matters most. And that's where I am right now, because, I have always aspired to be a business owner. But my family I come from a family background where there's a lot of established business owners. So I guess, it just kind of fell on me as the next person to take.
So were your parents entrepreneurs as well?
Yes. My parents are entrepreneurs. My late mom is an entrepreneur. My late grandfather was an entrepreneur. So it just kind of fell on me. I was a receiver of that.
Got you. Was it the same industry where, I know you have multiple things that you do that we'll get into, but what were your parents into as far as, what was their business model?
My grandfather was into textile.
Okay.
In Nigeria. And my mom too was into textile. My grandma was into textile from the 20s and the 30s. Okay. So we're talking about a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And this is even before I was even thought about being conceived.
Right.
So, yeah, but with time changes and so many of the industry involving, and so, you get a lot of experience, you hear a lot of stories about businesses, and, you're always looking for ways to evolve and hopefully find something that makes sense for yourself.
Okay. So you go from Nigeria to London, then New York, right?
Absolutely. As a toddler from Lagos, Nigeria, living in London, as, we say in London, I'm a proper London boy. London things, you know what I mean?
Yeah. What's life like in London?
Man, life in London, is beautiful. London is basically the same. It's on the same par as New York.
Right.
So if you grew up in New York and you go to London, it's pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. The only difference is just a little bit of the accent is a little different.
Oh, it's a lot different.
It's a lot different. You know what I mean? You say, in London, the way we say certain things when I'm growing up, in it.
Yeah,
which
it
means,
is.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was watching Top Boy and they say in it a lot.
Yeah. In London, we say different words because, London is predominantly a lot of Africans and a lot of Caribbeans. Mm-hmm. So you got a lot of Caribbean slangs, especially there's a lot of Jamaicans in London. Mm-hmm. So a lot of black folks in London, we got a different ways of speaking.
Right.
Like proper things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't speak too much Queen's English as a black people in London. We don't do that.
Let me ask you this: why do a lot of Caribbean, African, Jamaican move to London opposed to the States?
That's a good question. The reason being is because the United Kingdom is a colonial master of those regions. So, when countries are being colonized, a lot of your ways in doing things from the thought, your belief system is being eroded. And now, you thought on how to, behave, think, like the colonial masters. And so United Kingdom, which is they actually colonized the majority of the world. And so a lot of Nigerians, they tend to go to England first before they come to the United States because education system is similar, the way of speaking is similar, the belief system is a little bit similar. And the same thing goes for a lot of Caribbean countries, including Jamaica and other British colonized colonies. And so you're going to find a lot of, people from that region in the UK. And so you know how we have in the U.S. African-American. In the United Kingdom, it's Afro-Caribbean.
African Caribbean?
Afro-Caribbean.
Afro-Caribbean.
That's
Okay.
Afro-Caribbean.
That's starting to come out here a lot. So, like, my family's from Panama, so, like, they would say Afro-Latino, Afro-Panamanian. So it's similar to the same thing because a lot of people from Jamaica, Costa Rica, the Caribbean moved to Panama during the canal time frame for work, and they ended up just staying out there. That's why you have a lot of black Panamanians.
Yeah, and Panama is a beautiful place. I've been in Panama. Panama City is real nice.
Oh, no, definitely.
Nice.
Definitely. Let me ask you this, though. During your time in London, do you feel like black people are more accepted in the UK than the US? Do you deal with racism still in the UK, or is it more?
That's a very interesting question, because that question is really, really interesting because, I faced racism growing up back in the 80s when we were in school. And, we faced racism from two different angles because, as a child of an immigrant, you're African origin. So you face racism from white kids in school. Then you face racism from the first black folks that came to England first, which was mostly Jamaicans. A lot of Jamaicans moved to England in large due to after the Second World War to build England after England was destroyed by Germany. So that's why in England you see a lot of Jamaicans that actually worked in the public system, like underground system, because they had to come in and build the transportation system back for them. Now, moving to the U.S. was a little bit different because I came here as more or less as a teenager. So I was more firm in terms of how I look at things. So racism has been something that I've experienced as a young person. I've experienced even in corporate America when I was working. And it's just part of life. But as the saying goes, what doesn't break you make you stronger.
Nah, that's true. What are some of those early lessons you learned living in the States? Because then from London to New York's the concrete jungle, right? So you can become really tougher, become a man, learn a lot of lessons very fast. So what are like those early lessons you learned once you moved to New York?
Man, New York, forever in my heart.
Yeah.
Without New York, I'm not going to be where I am right now. And that's why I always represent New York, Brooklyn all day. Because, when I first moved out when I came from London in the 90s to the city, New York, as we say, the city of New York, I was supposed to be picked up by my uncle from the airport, from JFK. And nobody came. And I'm talking about, this were the days where there was no cell phones at large. We used to use pages back in those days. So, I had to go and get to the phone and page and waiting for them to call you back. When you page people back in those days, you got to wait in the phone booth for them to call you back. That's how it used to be. And, and my uncle never called back. So I'm like, man. And I just came in town. I just moved in. I had my Yankee jacket on, my Timbs. Back in the days, we always rolling Timbs.
You're ready.
And I got in the cab, and I just made my way to BK. And so for me, that was a starting point. That was my chapter coming to America. As a matter of fact, Coming to America is my favorite movie. Because I can relate to that across the board. I came into New York, and I'm supposed to be picked up. I didn't get my Rolls Royce, or I didn't get a limo or anything like that.
Nothing.
It was a yellow cab, and I had to just, pretty much work my way up from there. So New York really, it was the backbone for me it was a compass that was needed for me to guide guiding me through the, all the difficult challenges that was, going to be ahead of me.
Right.
And by living in New York, coming to New York at that time, it was just the best time, best way to learn and be ready for the future challenges. And that's what New York actually did for me.
So I know we talked offline, and you told me you moved to Texas, Dallas, 2004, right? Will you say you learned a lot of your hustle, grit, tenacity of being an entrepreneur from New York, London, Lagos, or was it something that you felt like was already instilled in you, and then it was just time for you to execute when you came to Dallas?
It's kind of interesting you saying that because it's a combination of multiple things.
Okay.
So growing up in London, and I grew up in the hood when we were young, back in the '80s and all that stuff. So times have changed now; things are looking way better. So when you grew up in the hood, and London's a little bit different from the U.S. growing up. Because in London, we all forced to live together. We don't have a black hood. White, black, Indian, everybody's stacked upon one. We stay in the same hood.
Okay.
When you come to the U.S., it's different.
Yeah.
Black people got their own hood, and white people got their own spot.
Hispanics got their own.
Hispanics got their own Spanish town. That's how it works. But in London, it's different. We all stay together, And so a lot of the hustle and the mindset came from, the different places that I've lived and watching. I'm as a young person, I'm an observer. I'm always observing how people are doing certain things, looking at how things are being done, and trying to find ways to just learn and elevate myself. That's always been my way of life, watching, trying to develop myself. Because you cannot be who you are without emulating certain people or looking at how other people are doing things, either the right way or the wrong way.
Gotcha. So this is the second time, I like to listen, so the second time you brought up, emulating somebody. Who's somebody that you grew up that you wanted to emulate when you became an adult or on your own as an entrepreneur?
My mom.
Your mom?
Yeah, my late mom. Because my mom, growing up, my mom was, she was a hard worker.
Right.
And for a lot of people that can relate to this, when you grow up in a single system where you got a single parent and literally doing all they can to make sure to provide for the family.
Right.
It's a big deal. And having to put aside what they want for themselves just for the sake of that child. And then, of course, you got a bad boy like Will. I was a bad boy.
Yeah.
I was the kid that was not supposed to be successful. And you had a parent that was working 3-4 jobs just to keep a family. And so with the fact that we grew up in the hood in London, me and my siblings, my mom meant a whole lot because I saw the hard work. And we were the first family amongst the other families that we knew that actually moved to the middle-class neighborhood.
Okay.
That was my mom's hard work.
Right.
So you can imagine we grew up in the hood. It's like you grew up in BK, you grew up and you stayed in Bed-Stuy, and all of a sudden you move out to Queens.
Right.
Queens is living in Queens, and the suburb of Queens is major.
Right.
That's what I saw with my mom, and that's why my mom is a person that I really wanted to emulate, but at the same time wanted to be better than her.
Right.
And that's my hero.
No, that's love. Similar to, I could resonate because my mom, my mom's Panamanian. She came here basically with nothing, but she instilled a lot of culture and morals in us growing up. My mom didn't have a lot, but she always made sure that if we did very well in school, she would find a way to reward us. So she used to work at the YMCA. They only worked 3 to 4 hours a day, making maybe like $10 an hour. But she would, save her money. And if it was something I wanted that I felt like I needed culturally to fit in, she would make sure I had Jordans. So it was like, it wasn't the Jordans that meant a lot to me. It was the fact that my mom would sacrifice, the luxuries for herself to make sure that her kids were good, to make sure her kids, were accepted in the States, accepted in America, didn't have to go through the stuff she went through. Because growing up, when she came to Brooklyn, she was black, she had an accent, she was bullied. Like, it wasn't normal. Like, people didn't really accept a lot of times outside of like the cultural hubs like New York. Like, coming to Texas, they're like, what's a black Panamanian? So my mom really made sure that, we were good. She made sure I had education, but she also wanted me to do my own thing, take my own path. So when I told her that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, she was like my first supporter, first investor. So I just wanted to say shout out to moms.
Yeah, big shout out to all the single parents and moms too, because even as a matter of fact, my business, which I know we're probably going to talk about, is actually dedicated. Fusion Vibe is dedicated to my late mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Well, basically, when we were growing up back in the 80s, growing up, and
Right.
my mom, I mean, real talk, my mom used to work 4 jobs. 4 jobs. She worked for the government, but the money's never enough.
Right.
So she just pick up cleaning job here and there,
Right.
and all that good stuff. And so because she's always working, she had to teach me and my brother how to cook, so we can be self-sufficient at a young age.
Okay.
I mean, we talking about the days where I was like, from the age of 7, we were left at home. You know what I'm saying?
Had
Where
to
your
fend for yourself.
You got to fend for yourself. So when you wake up, they're going to tell you do this and do that. And there was no phone, mobile phone. There was just house phone.
Okay. Yeah.
There was just no mobile phone. There was no FaceTime. And so because she taught me how to cook, that was where my interest as a foodie came.
So what were you cooking back then at 7?
Man, at 7, man, I was boiling egg.
Okay.
I was boiling egg and just cleaning out the pot, whatever she cooked.
Right.
She was also she was a self-taught chef, and
Okay.
she went to catering school.
Okay.
She's got a degree in catering back in those days. They used to call it Polytechnic.
Okay.
Back in those days when she had a degree, and so a lot of those experiences on how to cook actually stem from what I saw my mom doing, and also coming from growing up in London, New York, the interest of the multicultural.
Exactly.
You're talking about multicultural city. London is any race you're looking for in the world, you find in London, you find in New York.
Yeah.
So you can see the similarity between the two cities, and that's where everything really, really also was cultivated and stemmed from. Yeah.
So you starting off cooking eggs, and then of course she's helping you create more dishes.
Exactly.
Do you remember like an early dish that she taught you that's one of your favorites still to this day?
My favorite dish is pasta carbonara.
Okay.
I can make Italian dishes because then we the choice of food that we had growing up was not the choice of food of where your parents are from.
Okay.
Because obviously, the interesting thing about as a child of immigrant, because we don't know what our parents go through.
All right.
So our parents can eat anything, but here we are either Nigerian-American, Nigerian-British, whatever terminology we want to term ourselves, and we do not really understand our culture at that age and stage. So we're part of the culture. It's not until when we get to a certain age then we start learning,
Right.
I'm a little different. I got a culture. My culture is, not to say you're taking away anything from where you grew up, but you realize that you're multicultural.
Right.
So a lot of back in those days, we were forced to eat the food that everybody ate. So like the pasta, the burgers, and all that stuff.
Right.
So for me at that time, pasta was one of our favorite in my household. So I could make pasta carbonara from scratch. I love that.
So it's crazy. It's kind of opposite. So my mom was making a lot of Spanish food, arroz con pollo, arroz con gandules at the house, and then she would take me to school. I'm in elementary, middle school. For the packed lunch, everybody got sandwich and chips. I got rice and chicken with plantains.
And you were like, and the funny thing is back in those days when you take a culture food back to school, they were like, what is this? Why does it smell a certain way? Because you think about you cook rice, you got to cover it, and you open it up, it smells a little bit different.
Exactly.
Than what other kids are used to, and people start questioning as a matter of fact, if Kara's not taking, you start questioning what am I eating? Because everybody's saying this doesn't conform with what we're eating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted like pizza and a burgers like everybody else. I'm like, how come I gotta eat this?
Exactly.
But like you said early on, I didn't really understand, the multicultural aspect. I wanted to eat what everybody else was eating, But no, that's a great point though. But I kind of want to take it back before we kind of dive deeper into Fusion Vibes, right? Entrepreneurship, you're a serial entrepreneur, so there's a lot to unpack with that. What was your first shot at entrepreneurship? What was the first thing you tried in 2004 when you became an entrepreneur?
Well, actually, before 2004. So, when people say they're business owners, there's different levels to it.
Right.
You got just doing side business, and you got a formalized business.
Okay.
So my first business, basically growing up, when I first started as a teenager, I used to buy and sell clothes.
Okay.
So back in those days, you remember Dr. J?
Yeah, I remember
the
Dr.
stores.
Yeah.
Remember the store, J? The stores that we go in New York.
For sure.
Exactly. I'll go in the days of Anichi.
Yep.
Remember those? I'll buy those stores, and I go to those stores, buy certain things, and I'll basically ship it to London. The pounds has always been stronger than the U.S. dollars. So the pounds used to be like £1 would be like $1.40.
Okay.
So I get my Nietzsche, I get my Farms and all this. And back in the day, you probably go to Canal Street.
Yeah.
You know Canal, right? You go to Canal Street, you get those knockoff.
Yeah.
And ship it back to London and make some money. But when it came to the point of me starting my own business, because I was in corporate finance, working for one of the biggest mortgage companies in the world, which was Countrywide. And when I decided to leave, my first business was I owned a mortgage company.
Okay.
But simultaneously, I also started a non-emergency ambulance business.
Wow. At the same time?
At the same time. So the reason why that happened was the non-emergency ambulance, I was a stakeholder with 40%.
Okay.
And my mortgage businesses, I had a mortgage, insurance, and tax business. The company was called Duke Financial.
Okay. And you started this one yourself, or you bought into it?
No, I started this from scratch.
Okay. Duke Financial, you started
Duke
from
Financial was my first business, and I had my first office was in Kelly Boulevard in Dallas, in far north Dallas.
Okay.
And then, of course, from that, I was able to expand the business into 5 states. Oh, wow. So I was doing business back, always showing homage back to New York. I had business in New York. I had an office in Riverdale by College Park in Maryland. So I was doing business in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, and VA. And those was the days when I was a mortgage broker. Okay. Those were the days that mortgage industry was fantastic. Yeah. I made a lot of money.
It was before 2008.
Actually, the market crumbled more in 2007. But the world came to accept it in 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to unpack this. Okay, so you were in corporate finance, and then you ended up starting your own business, right? Is the reason why you started the mortgage, insurance, and the tax because it kind of coincided with what you already doing in corporate financing, so you had that experience and the clientele already? Like, why did you decide to do this first? Because I think entrepreneurs, sometimes we work in one field and we learn and then we try to do something completely different. So I kind of want to get your reasoning on why you started that business first.
Yeah. So my bachelor's is in finance and accounting.
Okay.
So when I was working for Countrywide, I realized I was in corporate finance and I had access to more than most people had. So the key thing about businesses is your ability to cross-sell.
Okay.
So by having a mortgage company, and having an insurance company and having tax, so the same, and we're talking about back in the days when people used to get a lot of refund. Yeah. I'm talking about, someone that's making $20,000 annually with 3 kids was getting like $12,000 in refund.
Getting that whole salary back.
I'm telling you, real talk. People were getting mad refund. So, my thought process was, if I can get that person's getting $12,000 in refund, and also this was back in the days where it's 0%, 100% financing for property. Yes. This was when Dallas, you can still buy property for $90,000.
Right.
$100,000.
Yeah.
The DeSoto's, the Duncanville, you can get $100,000, $110,000, $120,000.
Right.
And so my thought process was, if I have a client who's getting $12,000 in refund, 0% down, your closing costs are going to be paid, I would be able to sell you insurance for the property. At the same time, I'm mortgaging, I can provide you mortgage services. So that was the old purpose, ability to cross-sell different services to one client. So I'm making money in 3 ways from one person. That was the essence of Duke Financial.
That's a gem right there. Man.
Absolutely.
That's a gem. But where did you get the mind frame to understand it? Was it doing while working at the corporate financing position, or is it something that you already knew? Like, I guess my question is for people who don't have like the information and the access to what you had, how would they know like this is something they should try to obtain when it comes to a business? Like, if you're starting a new industry, how can you have, multiple, one customer, but be able to sell them multiple products?
Well, I emphasized earlier on about emulating and watching. So majority of the ability to put things together came from working in corporate finance. And I worked for a Fortune 500 company, a company that was well established, a company that was, the setup was just phenomenal. Right. So I took a lot of cue from those things, watching, because that's the only way you can grow. You got to observe and see if it's a great fit for you. And so when I was working in, I'm like, okay, watching how things are being organized, organization management. And I knew from time that if I wanted to start my own business, one of the ways to really elevate my business and really get it to the next level is do not think like a small man, even though I'm a one-man business. Put your business like a big business, and I start from the foundation.
Okay.
So I learned a lot of different things from working in corporate finance and, being in that forefront, seeing how the organization is set up, the management. I mean, yeah, one of the biggest downfall for a lot of small businesses, we don't have the resources,
Right.
and we don't have the manpower to hire good talent.
Right.
But if you can get some information from some people or some place, you have the ability to put things together.
Okay.
And that's really what I did at that point in time.
Okay. So Duke Financial, you grew that. Did you do you still have it? Did you sell it?
No. So Duke Financial started back in 2004.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I always tell people this. One of the great things is I've always wanted to be a business person. Dallas made me.
Okay.
And I give mad respect to Dallas. Dallas really made me. I give mad respect. I mean, even though I don't sound, I try to portray the Dallas accent so many times. Her, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But Dallas is, I'm like one of the biggest advocates
For the city.
for the city, because if you are talking about a place or you want to start your own business as a minority,
Right.
this is the best place ever.
Okay.
Dallas is the best place ever. You cannot accomplish or achieve your goals in certain city like New York because the cost of entry is so much.
Right.
And you're competing against a well-established, certain people that are well-established.
Right.
But you come into Dallas, you can start off small and grow from there. And knowing full well, the city of Dallas, the Metroplex, that has so many different cities. So you can pick and choose where you want to start from.
Right.
And as time goes by, you can move to the biggest city. That's a good thing about Dallas. And going back to the other question you were asking me about the Duke Financial actually bailed it up during the mortgage crisis. So actually left a little scar on me because it was the worst time ever.
Right.
1 minute I was a young man in my 20s, because I started young. I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I started my own business, and then of course with so many properties, I had different properties. I had properties in Maryland, I had properties in Texas, and I was making a lot of money.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I went from having money to not having money. As a matter of fact, my house was closed, and I was staying in my house in Irving on MacArthur, where the Cowboys practice stadium used to be.
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine that? Every time the deputy sheriff comes, never open that door.
Yeah.
Because once you open that door, you got 30 days to leave.
Right.
And, so the business really put a dent, but at the same time, it kind of motivated me.
Okay.
He motivated me in so many ways where I didn't give up. And the other thing I did was it opened doors of opportunity because I was able to look at things from a different standpoint. For example, I went to visit my mom when she was alive in Nigeria. And Nigeria's got a power problem, a major electrical power problem. And when I was over there, I just said to myself, man, they got power problem. You see how we have power consistently? They have, most countries that have power issues. And I invented a rechargeable light bulb. Yes. And I invented a rechargeable light bulb. And that was when Alibaba was just coming into the framework, the website. And I met a manufacturer, and I went to China. I stayed in China for almost 4 months to manufacture. Yeah.
So that was your next business.
That was my next venture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang.
Stayed in China.
How'd that do?
It was the most interesting time. Staying in a place where I don't understand the language.
Right.
I know 1 or 2 words, but cannot read the language. Mandarin is very hard to read.
Right.
But you can speak it easily than reading it. But it was a culture shock. But it just kind of made me realize that, life, as long as you got ability to do something, just continue pursuing your dreams.
Okay. If you don't mind sharing, I kind of want to dive deep in how you got there, because a lot of people look at foreclosure, bankruptcy, building up their business as the end all be all. They're like, say it takes 7 years to get past a bankruptcy. I'm pretty sure something similar for foreclosure, but you managed to deal with that, go visit your mother, go to China, and then start your new venture. How did you kind of, as entrepreneurs, how do we kind of get through those instances to where, like, man, we lost it all, but how do you kind of get yourself out of there and to even get the capital to start this new venture?
You know, my major preaching statement that I tell people is this: tenacity. And as a young person, when you're young, you always you ask a young person, what do you want to be? I want to be this, I want to be that. A young person never know what they want to be.
Right.
They only go with time. When I was younger, I wanted to be a boxer. Okay. Because I grew up in the eras of Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
And I want to be a boxer. And I went to boxing. I actually went for training for boxing, but when I realized it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But I like using the analogy of boxer because there's no bad boxer. If the boxer gets knocked down, he's got to get up,
right,
put his hand up, and ready for the fight. So to be successful in business, you got to have tenacity. The tenacity is needed when you're down. Tenacity is needed when you're up. So with the foreclosure, the advantage I had was because I'm a numbers person. Okay. My background is in accounting and finance. So one of the things that I realized was I'm not going to file bankruptcy.
Okay.
I'm not going to file bankruptcy because if I file bankruptcy, it's going to impact me. It's going to make my recovery process slower.
Okay.
So the best thing to do is this, and this goes back to my experience working in corporate finance.
Okay.
Do you know what the big companies do?
What, to buy and sell loans?
When they have financial obligations they cannot meet, what they'll do is they'll do what's called debt restructuring.
Okay.
And the same way it goes for a business, goes for individual.
Okay.
All you got to do is just call your creditor and just let them know this is the certain circumstance I'm going to, and I want to restructure my debt for a certain duration, and I'll get back up. That's one of the best way. But what mistakes a lot of people do is they do not call the creditor. It's like you're owing someone and you're ignoring the person call. You don't want to call them.
Why is our culture like that? We will not pick up the phone when we know we owe a company some money. Whether it's a phone bill, whether it's a late payment for a tolls, we do not want to address what we owe.
I think a lot of it has to do with exposure.
Okay.
Sometimes, you got to understand as minorities, most people, and some of us don't really have the basis, the foundation on how to do things. We learn things by ourselves.
Right.
So sometimes, if you never had families that been through that, or you didn't have any parent that can guide you, when you have this situation, this is the best approach. Then you know how to tackle it.
Gotcha.
But a lot of times, I just feel like it's based on exposure.
Right.
So if I was not in corporate finance, or I don't have a degree or anything to that effect, then basically what would have happened is I wouldn't know how to tackle such situation at that point in time. Yeah,
okay.
So
you end up restructuring your debt, which were you able to basically stretch out your payments, lower how much you owed in that way until you can kind of get back on your feet?
Yes, that's what I did. And the setting was perfect because at that point in time, the entire world was reeling from the mortgage. It was not only impacted by the U.S., the impact was felt worldwide. Because a lot of countries, so when I was working for Countrywide in mortgage industry back in those days, there's something we call MBS, mortgage-backed securities. So the United States government is the best creditor, the best investor, place to invest in. So what countries normally do is they'll come into the U.S. The days of I'm not sure if you heard of Lehman Brothers, the companies that actually caused part of the economic downfall.
Right.
So they will basically bring in billions. And when mortgage companies like Countrywide, when we sell mortgages, because I was working in a department that we traded this debt.
Right.
So what we do is each portfolio is graded based on the creditworthiness of the client. So you got grade A, grade B, grade C. The lower the grade, the higher the yield.
Okay.
So who doesn't want more yield? So a lot of people, so if you got a lower grade, that means those are people with a bad credit, high interest rate. So a lot of the investors from overseas that were investing in the U.S. because they knew that Fannie Mae will pay at least 80% if anything happens. And that's for what, that's one of the things that caused the demise of the industry at that point in time.
I can't remember the movie, but there's a movie about it.
Really?
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
movie about that era. If I think of it, I'll put it in the comments. But okay, so that's a great gem.
Yeah.
Debt restructuring. Like I feel like people definitely need to look into that instead of running or hiding from their debt. But then your venture, you created a rechargeable light bulb,
I did.
and
And
how that business go for you?
that was one of the most interesting time because, you know, when your back is against the wall, what you gonna do? My back was against the wall because at that point in time, prior to me doing that, my houses, I owned 5 properties
Right.
back between 2005 and 2007,
Okay. All in the U.S.
all in the U.S.
Okay.
And I had properties back in Bmore. You know, as a matter of fact, I had some properties where in Bmore, you remember The Wire, the show?
Yeah. I used to
I had
watch.
some property back there that it was just a junkie town, man.
Right.
But there were Section 8. The money
Right.
was great. So at that point in time when everything was gone, I figured, man, you know, what am I going to do? I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to rob.
Right.
I got talent. I got a skill set. I'm educated. I went to school. So, you know, I had to literally start thinking like an artist, start writing, you know, down action plans, what I can do and so forth. And the power situation, you know, the best way to really make money is provide solution. If you can provide solutions, you'll be wealthy.
Right.
That's one of the ways to make money. It's not to talk about it, but do something about it.
Provide solutions.
Find solutions. So when I went overseas to visit my mom and I realized we were having a power problem, I said, okay, let me just find a solution to this. I'm broke. I don't have no money. I was in debt to the tune of over $1.2 million.
In your 20s.
In my 20s, yes.
A lot of people would have folded.
Yeah. I was in debt to the 1.2 mil. All the properties was closed. And so as a broker back in those days, we had, if you're wholesale brokers, so the finance company had this deal whereby if they find any kind of like, you know, discrepancy in a file, they can dump it on your personal credit. You know how back in those days, you try to hook people up, you know what I'm saying? You try to help them out to get a loan and all that good stuff. Not doing something overly bad, but you just know that, let me just help this person out.
Right.
And all of a sudden, some of those things came back. I was in major debt. I had every reason to give up. But if I give up, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? So when I went overseas, saw the problem, I started thinking about solution. I went online, and literally I found a company that can make this rechargeable light bulb.
Okay.
And I didn't go to school for engineering.
Right.
But, you know, as a guy who was a hustler when I was younger, I just knew, man, you know, life.
Right.
All you gotta do is just think, be a thinker. And I put one and one together. I designed it, and I named it Global.
Global?
Yeah, Global.
Okay.
GLOBULB. I named it Global. Yes.
How'd you get the capital though?
Good question. So at that point in time, there was Nigeria was moving in. The government was trying to get a lot of the Nigerians in diaspora back home to invest, and that's what a lot of countries do. Even China did at one point in time. So, like, you know, like for instance, you have ties to certain countries, and the government is trying to find ways to get their country better, and they know there's a lot of citizens either were born Nigerian-Americans or whatever, trying to find a way to bring them back. So there was an organization called Nigerian in Diaspora.
Okay.
And I was part of that organization. As a matter of fact, the office was just close to this part of town. It was like downtown. So
it was in Dallas.
It's in Dallas.
Okay.
They used to have meeting. So I was nominated as a finance secretary. I've always had interest in international business because growing up in London, I've always had exposure of international market. I know about international market and growing up, I've always my dream actually was to become an investment banker. So when I was back home in England, before I went to the U.S., I went to college. We call it uni in London.
Yeah.
We don't call it college, we say uni.
Yeah.
I went to University of Greenwich, and my degree was I was studying economics with banker.
Okay.
I wanted to be an investment banker, so more or less more like an economist. And so my knowledge about international market was spot on. So I met a lady. She was very wealthy, and I presented the idea to her, like, hey, I got this idea, solution. And she said, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. And if my memory served me right, she invested I think it was close to about 120,000 then in 2007.
Right.
Yeah. You're talking about the economy is reeling, the world economy, and you got someone that can invest $120,000. And so my contribution was just more like a sweat equity.
Sweat equity. You do the work, she provide the capital.
Exactly. And so I took 45% because I didn't bring any money to the table, but I was the genius behind it. And, we just went to China. We went to, I'll never forget this, man, my first trip to going to China. First of all, I had to go to Houston to get a visa.
Oh, you need a visa for China?
Yes, then.
Okay.
You have to get a visa for China then. So went to Houston, get a visa, and from there, I traveled to Chicago, O'Hare Airport, and I took my first flight to China was Cathay Pacific, and that flight was 19 hours. Yes, so that flight was 19 hours. So we first stopped in Hong Kong, and from Hong Kong you go to Guangzhou in Guangdong Province, and from there you go to Zhejiang Province, Yiwu. I mean, it was an experience.
Yeah.
And I stay there. I go to the factory every morning. Doing a lot of QA, quality assessment, making sure everything was good. And until we got everything done, everything was manufactured and was shipped it to Nigeria at that point in time. So, and that was that was the experience I had at that time.
So would you say that investment of that $120K changed the trajectory of your life from where you were at before?
You know what? It changed it, not in a very positive way, because and I'm going to talk about other part in terms of the business, about business, the heart of being a successful business person. One of the biggest challenges we have when we do business with others is because you don't have the know-how, you don't have the fundings.
Yeah.
And so that was a turning point in my life because I didn't have the funding.
Right.
I'm the genius guy. I'm the guy with the knowledge, the brains.
The visionary.
But what tends to happen is that sometimes when you do business with others, they do not see the same vision as you see. And so eventually there's going to be a clash.
Right.
And so that's really what happened with me in that business. I was the brain, but the investors actually wanted to take over everything. And I left everything for them.
You just walked away?
I did walk away because it was a deal gone bad. And that's why it's good to have good parents too.
Right.
Because sometimes we want to make money, but you don't want to die for money.
Right.
And so at that point in time, this was my first deal. Then you can imagine I was broke.
Right.
My first deal, I was supposed to be netting at least close to $280,000.
Okay, from Global.
From that particular,
right.
From the proceed from that,
right.
Shipment that we did overseas.
Okay.
$280,000. I was broke, and unfortunately, I didn't even see none of that money.
You didn't see any of it?
I didn't see none of that money.
What happened, if you don't mind us asking?
What happened was when we got the products to Nigeria at that time, I was fortunate. I was able to get people in the government to purchase it, but we decided not to touch the money. And greed came about from the spouse of the investor. The investor was a lady.
Right.
The spouse was a man. And so it became a little bit nasty.
Right.
And my late mom then said, it's not worth it. Your life is more important.
Gotcha.
Your life is more important. These people are they're willing to go do anything just for the sake of just yanking this from you. And it's kind of interesting because, when that happened, I can't remember the exact date, but I came back home to the U.S. I was overseas for like 6 months,
okay,
not including manufacturing. And I came back home to the U.S. September, if my memory serves me right, I believe it was September 11th, 2008. When I came back, I was in debt to the tune of over 1.2 mil, and I came back with $100. Real talk. I came back to Dallas.
And you're supposed to have $280K.
I was supposed to have $280,000, and I only had $100.
What'd you do with it?
I don't even know what I did.
Probably 8.
I don't even know what I did. You know, I came back. My house was foreclosed. I was living in foreclosed property. And the reason I was able to live in foreclosed property then was the mortgage industry attacked the entire economy. So there was a lot of backlog with chasing people out of their home.
Right.
So
there's too many homes to deal with.
There was too many homes to be, you know, too many people to evict. So I stayed there. Then I had a nice Mercedes-Benz, park it in the tow truck, was just circling around trying to tow it, left it in the garage, and literally when someone knocks, you just peek through the window. Oh man, you're not gonna open that door, you know what I'm saying? And it was tough. It was tough until, you know, I came back and one of my lady friend, she was like, you know, where have you been at? I'm like, you know, I've been overseas and this and that. And she said, you know what? There's a business I want us to do together.
Okay.
This was a turning point for me. I said, what is it? And he said, you know, I want us to do a healthcare business together.
Okay.
And that was what changed my life.
Her approaching you for a partnership, it didn't scare you away from the last partnership you just dealt with?
That's a good question. It did scare me a little bit. I was a little bit, man, should I, shouldn't I?
Right.
You know, a lot of things have left bad taste in my mouth.
Right.
But it wasn't a partnership.
Okay.
It was more like an indirect partnership. So she was trying to get into the industry.
Okay. And
she couldn't. I mean, she was looking for that guy who had the code to, you know, a lot of things personally for me comes easily.
Okay.
So she was looking for that guy who she felt comfortable that can crack the code.
Gotcha.
Like, if this guy comes on board, we can do it. And so when I asked her, what is it? She said, you know, it's medical supply.
Okay.
And that time was a tough time, too, because that was when President Obama came in.
Okay.
And he wanted to literally start the Obamacare stuff. He needed to take money away from some sector to
fund it.
Defund some areas to raise money for the Obamacare and all that good stuff. And I said, what is that? He said, medical supply. I said, oh, really? I said, okay. And I went ahead and looked into it. I said, okay, this is not too bad. I can do this. And when we started the process, they said there was no more licensing. The government stopped giving credentialing and licensing.
Okay.
Real talk. And apparently, I was like, man, but we put a lot of effort into trying to get this. And I said, okay, you know, she was like, man, you know, this is the reason why I want you to come in, because I couldn't crack the code in this.
Right.
And I told her, hold on, what are we going to do? So you know what I did? I picked up the phone, and I made a call to I called Washington, D.C. That time, Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, she was a former senator or governor from Missouri. She was the health secretary. And I called asking to speak to the Secretary for Health.
Oh, wow.
And they told me she's not available. What's going on? I said, well, the economy's reeling. Small businesses are the backbone of the U.S.
True.
If you guys are not going to give us credential, you should have at least publicized that information. And they said, okay, what's your name? We're going to get someone to call you back. And I got a call from someone and asking me more details. Really and truly, the government stopped giving the credential. And within, I believe it was less than 4 days, and I was approved for credential. And my lady friend, she was like, how did you get this stuff?
Yeah.
And she was really, really like, oh no, this is not fair, this and that. And I told her, don't worry about it. I'm going to help you out. Then give her the contact of the person. And that's why information sharing in business is important.
Right.
She was the one that brought me into the framework. But if I was a person that was greedy, I could have easily just said, well, you got to fend for yourself, forgetting that she's the one that brought me in.
So y'all weren't partners. Y'all each had your own.
We each had our own business.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I got into the healthcare business. And that company was named Trio Medical Supply. And that was a turning point for me. Yeah.
So that ended up getting you out of debt, become a successful business.
Yeah. It took like approximately from 2008, it took at least about 5 years.
5 years.
It took 5 years for me to balance out. But going into the healthcare industry actually opened the doors and created a lot of, I was able to build my wealth back. I was able to pay my debt off. And it opened so many doors of opportunity for more businesses. That was To me, that was a major turning point.
Okay. So in this business, your business model is it's contracts, right?
Yes. So as a healthcare company, so we're basically contracted with Medicare and Medicaid. So we
Okay.
provide home health services. So my company, what I did at one point in time was, because I'm always about thinking big.
Right.
So the company name is called ABB Healthcare.
Okay.
And I used to own an assisted living facility, medical supply, medical scrubs. As a matter of fact, I used to own a medical scrub brand too. Supplied to the hospital and all that stuff, yeah.
Hey, what made you get out of the healthcare business?
I'm still in the healthcare business.
Okay, you still have that, but it's just operated by someone else.
Well, it's well structured, so I have a great team
Okay.
of staff member. That's my core. That's my biggest business. So I have a great team that's managing. They manage that for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with this turning point, was this what allowed you to kind of dive back to your roots and your origin, to think about starting a hospitality business?
Absolutely. The healthcare business actually helped me.
Okay.
Because it really opened the door of an opportunity. And the story just keeps getting more interesting and juicy because at that point in time, I purchased another healthcare business from a failing healthcare business for I believe it was about $28,000. And in 6 months, I sold it for $170,000.
Okay. So you purchased one for $28,000. Was it still bringing in revenue? Did they have any clients on the books, or?
So the key thing about a healthcare business is credentialing.
Okay.
That is your valuation.
Okay.
So the clients would come in, but getting the credential was harder.
Okay.
So that's the book of business. Because if you don't have a credential, you can't bring clients. So I was able to build a business. I got a credentialing, got a few clients. Once you have a healthcare business and you have the needed credentials, you don't need to have clients. You can even sell you can command prices.
Oh wow! So you bought for 28.
I bought for 28.
Sold for 170.
170.
In just a matter of months.
6 months.
6 months. A lot of people don't talk about. I'm gonna say a lot of people. A lot of entry level business owners. They don't talk about acquisition and acquiring other businesses, which is actually a gem in a kind of way to fast track to wealth. And people don't think about that. Was that opportunity would they approach you, or is it something that you sought out?
For me, it was more something I sought out.
Okay.
Because we all got dreams, but some die with the dreams, and some actually make the dreams come a reality. Okay. So for me, because of the fact that I've always been an exposed business individual, been on the international market, I always looked for that opportunity. And also, the mortgage meltdown taught me a lesson. No industry lasts forever. No industry lasts forever. One minute you can be successful in this industry, and especially technology is making most industry just fade away easily. Right. So for me, at that point in time, I figured I'm already established in this business. Maybe if I can do one or two things. I've always wanted to have a restaurant. As a matter of fact, the restaurant idea was conceived back in 2001.
Okay.
I had it back in my mind, but it just didn't really come to fruition until the timing was right.
Right. And that was 2020, right? Is when you started.
Well, the restaurant started. I started in 2019, December.
Okay.
And the restaurant, and so my story, and I keep telling people about my story. Like a lot of what I do or what my business is not just for me. I do it solely also to help people. Okay. I use my own business as a platform to elevate people, because there's going to be many after. Right. Everybody that's looking forward to at least finding ways to elevate themselves. We always need someone to emulate. Right. We need someone to look up to. And so when we do find those people, I'm one of those people willing to give a lot of information to people for the next generation. Right. And for me, all the businesses in my achievement has always been not easy. And the reason being is because they're destined for greatness. Right. Because sometimes when we find things or we do things that are very easy, we all of a sudden take things for granted, and we feel like, I can do it. Right. So the restaurant business, when I sold the healthcare business in 2019, my mom passed away in 2016, and that tore me apart. And when you grow up in a single family, you see what your mom, we never want to lose our parents. Right. And I felt compelled to want to honor my mom. I wanted to do something to honor my mom. I come from a single family. one of the things about success is never forget where you came from and
Right.
how you started. The minute you start doing that, you feel like you're untouchable. So when I sold that business, I had some additional funds, and I said to myself, if I'm going to do this restaurant business, I want to be in a A-graded location. And because I used to own a tax business before,
Right.
I used to have 10 tax offices at one point in time. I knew a lot about retail. So I said, most minority-owned businesses, we tend to go to the hood,
Right.
bad neighborhood, cheap rent, and things like that. But what we do is we're shooting ourselves in the foot because we're limited to certain demographics.
Right.
But if we can be on par with what the majority are,
Right.
we have a chance of elevating our business, growing the brand. So I wanted to be in an A+, meaning like a place where you have what they call anchor stores. Anchor stores are like your major brand, your McDonald's, your Starbucks, and all those places.
Got you.
You want to be in those places if you're doing a retail business
That's a
because
gem.
they are well established. They have a brand. They people are going to be tripping in, so you're going to be benefiting from that foot traffic. And so I got a location, which we're where we at right now, but it was a former jewelry store.
Okay.
And because I've been in real estate, I used to build houses. I've been building houses, so I converted the jewelry store to a kitchen, which was a lot of work. And we started the process in December. I signed my lease in February of 2020. The real estate, the agent for the company came back and told me the owner of the shopping complex, it was a big shopping complex,
Right.
does not want a black-owned restaurant in the shopping center. This was after.
Right.
Normally when you sign a lease for shopping or for a space, the owners or management have to sign off. It's like
Right.
a two-way signature. So they refused to sign. I'm like, why? They said they don't want. So my one of my childhood friends, a lawyer, he said, man, we going to the bank. We're cleaning these people out.
Right.
But I said to him, I said, no, we're not going to do that because that's going to just take away my dream.
Right.
I may or may not win, but what I intended to do is killed right there. And so they asked what, they wanted to make sure that, I was a well-established business owner.
Right.
And I let them know I've been in business for quite a couple of years. But I kind of see the point they were making, although the approach was bad in terms of using the word, we don't want a minority-owned, black-owned business.
Right.
Because you have in the shopping centers, McDonald's and Starbucks and all that good stuff. And mind you, Richardson is home to majority of Middle Eastern people.
Right.
So I'm like, how you gonna have Middle Eastern restaurants in the same shopping complex, and you don't want me to come in there?
Right.
But sometimes it's a way to approach things.
Okay.
You don't have to be aggressive about it,
For sure.
because sometimes when certain people are looking for your aggression, you got to approach it in a very smart way.
Right.
You got to show them you're bigger. So I told him, I said, we need to have a meeting, conference call about this. Ask me a couple of questions. And it was, we thought you were just a small business guy because they've never seen me before.
Right.
The company was based out in Houston. They own a lot of shopping complexes in Dallas. I said, well, what you thought I was just like a cook or something? Well, that's what we thought. We thought you were a cook or something.
Right.
We didn't know you were educated. Real talk. We apologize.
At least they apologize.
We apologize. And we started the process. We're still building. And right after we finished building, about to commence, you remember the statement from the former president that something coming by summer is going to go? That was COVID.
Yeah.
COVID came. And with the experience that I've had, the, ups and downs in life, I said to myself, you know what? The best time to be in business is the worst time. And that's why the business was open April 18th, 2020.
Okay.
That's when I opened Fusion Vibes in the heart of COVID.
The heart of COVID.
Yes. The worst time ever. It was the worst time ever.
How'd you get the word out, especially with it being a new business during COVID when people aren't really going out, so they can't really get the entire experience?
It was tough. It was real tough because a lot of people remember the restaurants or businesses before they went in. They did not remember businesses that started
Right.
when everybody was in. I remember back in the days where 75, you can probably count like 5 cars. And the only reason I was able to move out because I was considered an essential because I own a healthcare business. So I have a company car which is branded my healthcare business. So I'll be driving that around. So that way, if the police sees me, they'll allow me to pass through. Because, and fortunately, Texas being a conservative state, because back in New York, nobody went out.
Yeah, nobody's outside.
So for me to at least be open for business was great. And I actually had to market with friends and families.
Right.
And there was a lot of pushback. Like, why would you want to do a business in the heart of COVID?
Right.
People were dying. I lost a couple of staff members. I lost a lot of patients. And people were asking me questions like, why would you want to do this? Why don't you just wait? But at that point in time, I didn't know what I was thinking. But the driving force for me at that time was I wanted to honor my mom.
Right.
Sometimes when you want to do certain things, you do not, you see the obstacles, but you don't see it.
Right.
There was a lot of obstacles. We'll be open, no customers. And people still got to get paid.
Yeah.
And I was paying people, and I've always been one individual that I always like to take care of people the way I like to be taken care of. So I always pay my staff member a very, very good wage.
Right.
And they were like, man, Mr. Will, they even felt bad for me. Like, I don't know you're doing this, man. You don't have to pay us. And I'm like, it's okay. It's going to get better. Because, and that's part of being the success of trying to be a business person. You always have to have the optimistic mindset, not blindly, but looking at, data, analysis. And so, whatever the situation is, we knew that it's not going to last forever.
Right.
And so, and just pretty much literally just continue working hard, putting the word out. And that's where we are right now. We actually going to be 4 years in April.
Man, congratulations.
Thank you.
What would you say is the secret sauce behind Fusion Vibes? Because a lot of, hospitality groups have established, opened up restaurants, lounges. What would you say is like that secret sauce? I like to say that y'all have at Fusion Vibes that attracts the clientele and people week in and week out.
So the interesting about Fusion Vibes is a brand.
Right.
It's just not a restaurant, it's a brand. And what makes it unique is, so Fusion Vibe is really my story. I grew up in London, and I grew up with a lot of Caribbean, a lot of Jamaicans. In London, I grew up with a lot of yard man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when I decided to start Fusion Vibe, I said to myself, people get fed up of eating the same thing.
Right.
And a lot of food is attractive. However, most time it's not attractive to the general population.
Gotcha.
So it's a matter of taking traditional and turning to contemporary. And black people, our food has always been tasting great.
Right.
Whether you're African American, you're African, or Caribbean. But what matters most is the presentation,
Right.
the ingredients of the food, the plating of the food. And so Fusion Vibes is the only place you can come to where in one place you can have Nigerian-American food, you can have Caribbean food, and you can have Southern cuisine. You're not going to find many restaurants in the U.S., not even in Dallas,
Right.
that offers that. And that's one of the things that makes us unique.
That's that fusion.
That fusion, ability to just draw in different crowd. It's a place where anybody can come. It's not limited to just any demographics. We for everybody.
What would you say about for somebody who wants to get into the hospitality industry? What would be your advice for them? Because, I feel like there's business models that are like attractive, sexy, right? That's real estate, that's media, hospitalities, bars, restaurants, lounges, etc. All difficult and all, margins are different. But what would be your advice for somebody who wants to, start their own version of a Fusion Vibes, whether it's their own type of, culturally food, or what would you kind of tell them?
It's kind of interesting you saying that. The first thing first is this: you gotta have tenacity, and you gotta be willing to work. At one point in time, when I wanted to get into the restaurant business, I'm an accountant. I'm a foodie. I know how to cook, but that's not my career.
Right.
And most people that were in the industry before me, when I asked them about the pros and cons, one of the biggest one was your chef is going to quit on you. They will quit on you. And when they quit on you, they don't give you notice.
Did they?
They did. I actually worked in the kitchen for 1 year. I was working in the kitchen for 1 year, cooking.
Dang.
When my friends come in and want to visit me and just chill and have a great time, I'm like, this is not the right time, and you might unless you want to throw an apron on and come to the kitchen.
Yeah.
If you do not have the ability to literally work the things or do the things as low as cleaning the floor, mopping the floor as an owner, you cannot go into the hospitality business. Because the problem is this, it's an industry that it's predominantly unskilled employees. They do not share the same vision as you.
Right.
They just coming in to get work, get paid in and out.
Right.
You're the owner of the business. You're the one that saved money, sweat to get that money, start the business, looking for money to pay bills. They have no clue, and even if they do, they don't care.
Right.
So in order for you to have that business continuity, you have to be willing to do everything. I always tell people that if you cannot do 50% of a business that you're getting into, don't do it. Because when your employees let you down, then you're going to have to close your business. So there are a couple of times when we first started at one point in time, I mean, employees, we didn't have no servers or anything. I'll be serving. I mean, to today, I still do it sometimes. I serve customers. I wipe table down. Those are things that makes you feel good as an owner.
Right.
Because you know what? It shows if my employees are not able to do this stuff, I can do it myself. I can go to the kitchen and cook.
Right.
I might not be able to cook all the dishes, but I can do a lot of stuff. And also, it shows leadership. When you are an owner that can do the things that employees can see you can do, it kind of makes them wonder like, oh man, if I mess up, they can get rid of me.
Yeah, you're expendable a little.
Exactly. So, and it shows a leadership, not just telling them, clean up the plate, clean the table.
Right.
I can do all that stuff. I can take garbage out. I can talk to customers. I can take a payment. I can make a drink. All those things are, the skills that they're just valuable skills, So anyone that want to go into any hospitality industry, you got to know about the industry 50% because you're always going to have that time where the business is still building. You're still building the business. You don't have the resources to bring in talent. You don't have the resources to hire more people to do the job. So you're going to be working tedious hours.
That chef part worries me because it's like you said, if your chef quits on you and you don't have anybody else as backup and you can't do it yourself, your business is closed for the day.
Your business is closed. You got to be able to know how to do it. And you, even if you don't know how to do it, you have to be willing to learn.
Right.
Why would you want to start a business you don't have no clue about?
Right.
The core of the business, when you have an hospitality business like a restaurant business, the core is the food. It's not a server. It's the food.
Right.
And if you know how to make those food, you will be successful because now you can even tell the chef how, what to do. But if you have no clue, the chef, he doesn't have a clue.
Yeah.
You know what? I want more money.
Yeah.
And people start bargaining with you that, hey, you got to give me more because they feel like you don't know what you're doing. So it's really important for you to know what you're doing when you go into business.
In any business, what would you say is like the first hire you should make?
That's kind of interesting because it really depends on the industry.
Gotcha.
If you have a business where it's more of a specialty industry, you probably going to have to hire whoever that person is. If it's hospitality related business, it's a little bit tough because the cuisine, like as a Panamanian origin, like the way to cook the food, the rice and peas, for instance, is different than the way they cook the rice and peas, say in Belize.
Right.
It's different from the way they cook in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So that person's got to know some kind of the process of how to make that food. It's really important.
Nah, I agree.
So that it's really subjective, based on the industry. If it's just an office business, then you can do it yourself, or you can probably just, with technology, you can just probably hire someone that's based in overseas and you pay them to do the job for you, like answering calls, relaying information, emailing, and all that. But if it's the actual work, the person's got to be there.
Right.
It might be a little bit tough. It's really tough.
Man, that's amazing. You have an amazing story to where it's like it's definitely one of those podcasts where it's like a part two is needed because it's so much.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I definitely enjoy your story. But I kind of want to kind of tie it all in this, man. You've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, real estate, healthcare, financing, tax accounting, hospitality. Didn't even really get too much talk about the spice and packaging, which kind of goes hand. I believe will go hand in hand with kind of
Yeah.
fusion vibes, right?
Man, it's I keep telling you, man. Every story that I got, every business I got,
Has a
got a
story.
story behind it. The spice was really, really interesting, man. So what happened was, when the restaurant opened up, a lot of us did not know the impact that COVID was going to have. So every borders, airport, cargo, freight was shut down.
Right.
Literally shut down. Grocery stores were emptied out. Remember those days?
Yeah.
So the spices, some of the spices to make some of the food, needs to be imported. But the borders were closed. Countries were closed. Airports was closed. Because I'm a foodie, started playing around on how to make spices. I'm like, because I needed spices to cook certain food.
Right.
And so I got it wrong, kept on trying, and eventually I got it right. So I let people sample it. I'm like, man, how did you make this spice? Where did you get the spice from? Because, you can't get it from grocery store. And then, I just made it. I said, really?
Yeah.
We want to buy it. Me being the perfection, I'm a perfection. Like, I try to make things, I always have this mindset. I don't think small. And I always tell people, the way you think about how to create a business, most of the time will determine how far that business grows.
Right.
So I've always had this mindset of the big. I never think small.
Think big.
Yeah. So I purchased, I said, you know what? I can sell this to people. I can definitely sell this spices to people. I said, okay. Started going online on eBay, looking for means of packaging spices. I bought one and realized that it's not going to do the job. So now I found another one. Then I called a company and said, I want to do a spice like what they got at Walmart. I want to do that kind of spice. And it was like, oh, yeah, that's not a problem. You need this, you need that, but I'll put you in contact with a company. So I ended up spending $200,000 to buy equipment. I went into an industry that I had no business going into. I went into an industry that I had no business or know of the business. And I ended up spending $200,000. So I got a warehouse in Plano, tried to figure it out. And so started making the spices. So when I made the first spice, it came out good. People liked it. But the packaging was not a good fit.
Right.
It was more, it's more like in packaging industry, they call it pillowcase bags.
Okay.
So on shelf, they don't sit, they tilt. And retailers for like the grocery stores, they do not want employees having to stack products on shelf no more. Once they put it on the shelf, they want consumers to just pick and go.
Right.
They don't want, back in the days, when I was young as a teenager, I worked in a grocery store, and you got to go back and just rearrange and push straighten up. Nowadays, they don't want to do that. So the form of packaging they use now is a pouch bag.
Okay.
Because the pouch got a base that sits. So they said, that's what we want. So I had a consultant, and we approached Costco. I was really excited. Wow, Costco. The guy said, well, we're going to get you to Costco. I'm like, great, this is great. And so they said, no, this bag doesn't sit. We don't want this. Like, if you want, you got to use a pouch. How much is a pouch bag? $400,000. Where am I going to get $400,000 from?
Yeah.
But I kept on just relentless. Tenacity. Raised financing. I found a company in Wisconsin that was selling machinery for $350,000. Reached out to them. I don't have $350,000. Number one. I don't have the money. Number two. But I want to buy this machine.
Yeah.
How much do you have? I said, I don't have any money. And we went back and forth for, I believe, for close to a year. But the economy was still struggling as a result of COVID. And they reached back out to me and said, we're doing Clarence. We'll give you the machine for $250,000. I said, okay. How much do I need now? Well, you need to give us 50%. I said, I don't have 50%.
It's 125.
We'll give you a finance company to finance equipment. I said, okay. How much do I need? So I ended up, I think I paid $80,000 down to get equipment. So I got equipment.
And they had to finance other
restaurants. I had to do the financing of the other one. Got equipment. After purchasing equipment, oh, you need to get this, you need to get that, because machineries is components. They come in different bits and pieces. I ended up spending close to, I think it was about 450 plus on the new machinery. Yes.
Just for the spice and packaging.
Yes. I ended up spending $450,000. How I did it, I don't know. And I was able to get a machine. It was a lot of work. It was, and finally, then I got to get the bags made, and it was a lot of work. And I realized, you know what? I've gone too far. I can't go back.
It's hardcore now.
And so that's my story for people that was telling the tenacity. I didn't know nothing about this industry, but I mean right now. And so as a matter of fact, I'll be presenting the spices to HEB tomorrow.
Wow.
Yes, I'm going to be presenting to HEB to hopefully get into the grocery stores and Fiesta, HEB, and other grocery stores. And so it's currently online right now on Amazon, Fusion Vibe Spices. If you go on Amazon, type in Fusion Vibe Spices.
Okay.
And it's in like one or two few mom and pop grocery stores. But the goal right now is to literally get it in to grocery store. Because when I look at the brand, the Fusion Vibe Spices, it's more of a perpetual business. I want to be on the same level as the Kellogg's family.
Right.
Because now I got a brand, I want a trademark.
Right.
And I got a brand that I can push into store, and it could be perpetual. And that's a story about Fusion Vibe Spices.
Man, you have stories on stories on
I
stories.
got a lot of stories. And it's always great to share those stories to help others.
But yeah, just to kind of bring it all together, man, you have a lot of amazing stories from, growing up in Nigeria to getting to London, to New York, to starting your first business as a teenager, getting into corporate financing, using what you learned there to start Duke Financials, from, 2007, 2008, what happened, Billion Up, and having the tenacity again to start a new venture that you were okay to walk away from because you understood that, your life meant a lot more, to not gatekeeping when you had the opportunity to allow us to share information with somebody who brought you in to, the healthcare industry, to now, honoring the legacy of your mother with Fusion Vibes and Fusion Vibes Spices, man. Before we get out, I just kind of ask you one thing. If you had to summarize your 20-year career thus far, what would you tell somebody who's watched you grown this 20 years?
Man, never give up. That's as simple as that. Because life is beautiful. I mean, you think about it. Especially for me, as a business owner, I do business. I got real estate in 6 countries. So when this child of an immigrant that grew up in the hood in London, this guy that came from London, New York, is supposed to be picked up, and nobody just picked him up at the airport, stranded at JFK by himself.
Right.
To now become a multi-business owner, well-established individual, and now, when I'm traveling in certain classes of plane, and I'm around people of a certain status, or when I'm overseas and I'm dealing with other government, because I do business in so many different countries, it just makes me appreciate that not giving up. Because that's just it's a thin line. I mean, once you give up, because everything in life, it's a mindset.
Right.
It's a mindset. If you give up, you're not going to be able to at least accomplish or fulfill a lot of those things.
Right.
We always going to have obstacles. People don't realize this sometimes, when they think, because you're established, you're well-to-do, you're not going to have an obstacle, and that's not true.
Right.
As you become more successful, the obstacles become more. When you're not successful, the obstacle is there, but it's minimal.
Right.
Minimal obstacle. But as soon as you start getting established and people get to know you, you got a lot of obstacles. So, and I always tell people, never give up. That's the most important thing.
Nah, never give up. I definitely co-sign that. Will, I co-sign you.
Absolutely.
We definitely co-sign Fusion Vibes. I'm going to call this the tenacity episode, man. You've shown that throughout your whole entire career life, man, and it's an honor to share your story. Definitely need a part 2. So before we get out of here, please let them know, where to follow you at, how to keep updated with you if they want to, learn more about you as well as support you, where they can do that at.
All right, you can check us out online on Instagram, Fusion Vibes. It's Fusion Vibes #1 on Instagram, or you can go online, fusionvibes.com. You can purchase spices on Amazon, Fusion Vibes Spices, and we're located on 75 and Beltline in Richardson. And as I always say, it's a vibe.
It's definitely a vibe.
It's a vibe.
You heard it here at the Cosign Conversations podcast. I'm your host, where we interview entrepreneurs, creators, executives, influencers that we co-sign and want to highlight to our community. So if you like this episode, please make sure you comment with, some vibes that you can send over to Will, and make sure you check them out ASAP. Until next time, you continue to live the Cosign life, and we'll see y'all then.
All right. Thank you.